In this original podcast series, we take a peek behind the curtain of some of the world's biggest film events and talk to some of the industry leaders and working pros across every department of independent film and television to find out what it's really like. The Hub is a weekly in-depth chat about all things film and television. What movies are featuring at the upcoming GMA Awards ceremony, past winners, premieres, nominees, red carpet gossip, career advice, and insider info to help you better prepare for a career in the film industry. You're listening to The Hub, your weekly fix for all things film and television, and some other stuff. Hosted by Jason Matthewson.
Indeedy. Good evening. I keep doing that. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome along to the 6th live broadcast of The Hub. However, this will be episode number 5 in season 1. Please help me welcome along the delectable, lovely, as always, Miss Karen Bryson MBE. Good afternoon, Karen. Thank you so much, darling, for coming along. How are you? How's things been? It's been a minute since I've seen you.
Good. I mean, these are really strange times, and I suppose for actors and people in our industry, everyone's fretting. Keeping a positive mind is imperative.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's very important, and I think people have been doing that quite well. How's your quarantine been doing? What have you been getting yourself up to, or trying to stay creative, or entertained even?
Yes. You know, to begin with, rather optimistically, there was quite a few self-tapes that needed to happen, and that's always a bit of a production within itself. But I've been doing all sorts of bits and bobs to keep creative. Mm-hmm. It's now gotten to the point where it's daily meditation.
Oh, nice.
Because this is really nuts. And as much as you want to kind of look at the bigger scale, you've got to keep a lid on it. You know, limiting how much you look at the news, limiting. Oh, it's just crazy. And
yeah.
Potentially quite scary.
I mean, for the first couple of days, I was watching, as I'm sure everyone was, 24/7 just news being fed into my house through the television. And after like a week or 10 days, I was like, I got to turn this off. I can't just have these world leaders bombard me with this information 24/7. I was like, too much, way too much. But now, thankfully, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're 2 weeks away from what they say, at least here in the UK anyway, is the lockdown. So technically, we should be, in theory, coming out of this in 2 weeks' time. But I don't see it happening, unfortunately. I would love it to. I can't wait for us to go back to normal. I don't see it happening, though. What do you think? I mean...
And not only that, but what does normal look like? So for our industry, what does that look like? They were saying there were going to be certain guidelines in terms of proximity of people. What does that look like if you're trying to tell a story, you're on screen, and it's, you know, what does that's what I'm really interested in, what it will look like and how it will impact us. I mean, there are lots of productions at the moment which had to halt, which of course has a whole knock-on effect in terms of retaining their talent, the cast, holding on to them financially, and then it could be a whole thing of them not being available. So there's loads of productions which are up in the air.
Yeah,
there's lots of things in the air in terms of our industry. So things like proximity of people, being able to retain the talent that they might have just had that slot, but because of this, they've had to, you know, halt production globally.
Oh yeah.
You know, what does that? So it's going to be an interesting phasing back in, because I can't imagine it being okay, we're back to normal.
Yeah,
because normal will never exist. What is normal? It's the new normal.
Yeah, this is our new climate, and I've just been talking to various wonderful guests over the last 10 days or something on here, and we've been talking about just that. What is normal, and what is, and honestly, I think we, the creatives, we will be the last ones back to work again. The cinemas, the movie theaters, the events of any kind, really, but creative events, film, music events, and so forth. I think we'll be the last ones to get released back into to work. And when we do, how is that going to affect us? Because I think whenever we get out of this physical lockdown, and I'm sure there'll be stages, they'll not just go, okay, back to work. No, there'll be stages for sure. But even after we've finished or passed the last stage and we're quote-unquote normal again, I think it's going to take us quite a while to get out of the mental lockdown, because you know what I mean. Like when before we would just run and embrace each other, and you'd meet someone that you know at a film event or whatever it is, you come over, give them a hug, hey, how's things, you have a drink together, blah blah blah. I think now there'll be that, like, you know, you'll meet someone who you care for, and you would naturally give them a hug, but you'd be like, I'm holding back, not because I don't want to, because this has been conditioned for the last 9 months to tell me that people are dangerous. People are not dangerous. You know what I mean by that. It's like,
Absolutely. I think that goes across the board. I don't think that's just our industry.
no, absolutely.
I think culturally, there are various cultures. For example, Italians and Spaniards. Italians kissing two cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
Will that evolve? Will that change?
Yeah.
I think generally the human race, wherever you are, whatever you do, there are going to be, you know, mental conditioning of keeping distance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the toughie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys that I live with here, he's a chef, and we were just talking about this yesterday, and he was, you know, I was saying, oh no, you'll be probably the first wave to go back to work, because that is the catering, that's the hospitality industry. But he mentioned something to me which was a very good point, which is, if you work in, like, say, Domino's or just a regular restaurant, okay, that can, you know, put a table between each customer or whatever it is. But let's say you work in fine dining, which the entire process of fine dining is about the service. It's about you, the customer, going in and having this amazing experience. How can the waiters and staff, how can they provide that service when they have to go, here, there's your dish, and throw it at you from across the room?
There's a really funny video going around of a woman serving stuff, and she's literally just keeping a distance, throwing the cup of tea, throwing the plate, which I thought was quite funny, because as you're saying, it is about the service, and the service industry is about people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In terms of our industry and getting back into it, you know, we are grateful for key workers, and NHS, of course,
absolutely,
above all else, saving lives, putting their lives, exactly.
Bravo.
Putting their lives at risk to save ours. Other key workers, things like delivery men, postal workers, just to keep the infrastructure of the globe rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I'm not a key worker. We're not key workers. We're not NHS workers.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, in this lockdown, the amount of people listening to radio, more music, more streaming services, the Netflix, the Amazons. Mm-hmm. You'd lose your mind if you didn't have the entertainment industry. You'd lose your mind. Mm-hmm. Books, so writers. So in some respect, we're not saving lives, but emotionally, we kind of are.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't put us on a pedestal. But without entertainment, people would have lost their minds.
Absolutely. I've been saying just that to my guests over the last whatever week or 10 days that we've been doing this as well, is all these artists have come out in their thousands and hundreds of thousands, and a lot of people who are very, very, very recognizable. You know, Elton John and Chris Martin done a concert from their living room. Dave Chappelle done a stand-up show from his conservatory. Brad Pitt did what was meant to be his SNL sketch, which he was meant to do for SNL. Yeah. He did it from his house, I guess. And it was really good. And people are coming out, and I've said this a bunch as well. Although we're in lockdown, although we're told not to do this, that, and the other, not to see our loved ones, not to do all the things that make us human, we seem to be happier people. We seem to be more forthcoming. We seem to be more giving of our time and just more pleasant. And I personally, who was it I was talking to? Adam or Ian the other day? I'm not sure which one mentioned it, but they were here in London as well. And just like any major city, they tend to be, they can be a little bit, disjointed. They can be very hustle bustle and go, and everyone's on their own path. But now, like even here in East London where I live, people are like, hey, how's things? You know, have a nice day. God with nice weather. People are just like, I'm getting the small town mentality of where I'm from here in London.
Globally, we're all in the same boat. So what I'm finding really, really interesting in terms of, you've just said that, you know, people are doing concerts from their living room, etc., etc. One of the things that I'm finding really interesting about this is in terms of us being freelance, for example, not tax breaks, but help, we're last on the list, even though we're offering up some solace in this period of time. One of the things that I'm also finding really interesting is us creative folk are finding a way. I just read something about a series coming on ITV, which is, I think it's 6 stories, 15 minutes long. And for producers, they have to adhere to government guidelines. So rather than just have, for example, I think Sheridan Smith starts the first one.
Okay.
David Threlfall, my mate from Shamless, is in one of them.
Awesome.
They had to adhere to government guidelines, which means you know, social distancing, 2 meters apart. You're not supposed to be on lockdown, etc., etc. They found a way around it. So what they're doing is they delivered sanitized cameras and a bit of equipment, and somebody else in the house. I think Ian Glenister's doing one, and I think his son's in the house, who's also an actor, and the wife is there. I believe they taught someone to operate the camera and the sound. And if you've got a husband and wife who are actors in the same house, they're doing a duologue. So we're finding a way, and this is going to be broadcast standard. So this is going to be on ITV, 15-minute slots. So you can't keep us creative locked down.
I love that.
Whether it's Brad Pitt doing his SNL sketch in his living room, or Elton John doing a concert. Lady Gaga, they did that big concert. You can't keep us down, and that's one of the things that gives me massive heart, because, you know, in a crisis like this, which is about life and death, sometimes people may think that artists are at the bottom of the pile.
Absolutely.
You know, prance about on a screen and it's all very glamorous. At the end of the day, we're telling stories. And in this lockdown period, these stories have formed solace.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff I've read. There was a woman in a block of flats who was on her own, and she left a message on her door, her flat door, and she said, I know we're not supposed to touch, but I'm losing my mind. I've read everything in my house. The normal TV I've kind of watched. Do you have any DVDs? So people from the other levels in this block of flats left DVDs outside her thingy. She then left another message saying, you've made one old girl really happy, because at least she's got some material to look at.
I love
while
that.
She's sitting twiddling her thumbs.
I love that.
You know, yeah, we're doing our bit, and we're continuing to do it despite the odds.
Yeah.
You know, people doing stuff, filming stuff, monologues on Skype, people doing poetry to cheer people up. That's us creatives.
Yeah.
So bottom of the ladder in some respects, but I'm sorry, I think we're forming. I think we're part of the machine that's making people feel better. Entertainment makes people feel better. It just does.
I think it is now, as it's always been, escapism. And we need escapism. God love us, we need escapism now. And like you, Karen, I'm not for a second in the grand scheme of things, or even in the small picture now, I'm not saying that we are the most important. We're not. It's the first responders. But put all of that to the side, the people who are physically, like, you know, going to find a solution to this problem and keeping us alive and maintaining us and all that. Put that to the one side. Now you've got 99 or 95% of the planet just sitting twiddling their thumbs. And the artists have done what we have always done, which is entertain our fellow human beings. And now it's just getting noticed. And I hope that that's not forgotten when we get out of this. And I hope, as I've said a number of times now, I hope if there's any politicians out there listening, when the time comes around again, when you're presented with a budget, don't just shove the arts under the rug like we don't matter and cut all our budgets every 5 seconds to give it to some other, you know, much less worthy area. And also, I think as well as, you know, people always give money to, say, the NHS or to medical causes or to scientific research after the thing has happened. Maybe budgets should be put aside or put into NHS before the next pandemic. So when it happens, if it happens, hopefully it won't, but if it does, we're ready for it this time. Because I think that's the one big thing is we as a species, as a human, as a planet of people, we just weren't ready for this. And apparently, you know, without dig. It doesn't take too much, or you don't have to dig too deep to hear the stories where we were warned, apparently. But of course, now I'm bordering on conspiracy now, really closely. And of course, conspiracy is not a conspiracy if it's true. But the moment you say that word, you sound like a crazy person. So,
Do you know what, Sir Jay? My theory in life is to deal with what you've got. So in terms of going backwards, that doesn't serve us.
I totally agree.
It just doesn't. As much as we can write articles, discuss on the phone with our mates about how we should have known, shoulda, woulda, coulda. We didn't. We're in the situation we are in now. And for me, it's always about moving forward with hope and optimism. Mentally, trying to look after ourselves, giving ourselves an okay time to stay in bed if you need to, or stay in your pajamas. This isn't all about self-improvement and keeping up with Mr. Next Door who's suddenly turned vegan and's running 5 miles on his exercise out. No, it's about feeling what you feel and hopefully getting some messages through of hope and optimism, because we're in the situation we're in globally. We can't go back. So in terms of
nor do I want to.
Sorry?
Nor would I want to go back, because going back, I think, is never a good choice.
I've never sort of lived with regrets in that respect, as much as you kind of go, we should have done this. We didn't. We've got what we've got, and it's about moving forward positively as much as we can, I think.
Do you know, as well as I said this to my good buddy Ian Beattie from Game of Thrones and Gangs of London was on with us the other day, and for the first time, certainly in my lifetime, and I think off the top of my head in recent history, unless you go way back to like the bubonic plague and Spanish influenza way back in the day. I think this is the first time that we as a human species, irregardless of your sex, your orientation, the color of your skin, or anything else, this is the first time. Exactly. This is the first time that we as a species are fighting against something that is a thing. Not a person or a belief system or anything else for that matter. It's a thing. It's an it. And we as a human being, as a human species, are bringing all to bear to fight against it. And that, irregardless and indirectly, that brings us together. And I think we can be better as people. I think we can be better to one another. And as people, I think we can be a hell of a lot better to our planet. And there's no excuse not to do that.
Yeah. And we're seeing pictures coming through now of, I posted some stuff yesterday about some aerial pictures of the Thames and various coastlines in and around the UK. And it's starting to crystallize. So where it was murky with all sorts of nonsense, this time of not abusing it is really showing some major improvements. The same with pollution. Pollution levels globally, I would imagine, are on the up. At Christmas, I remember telling you just before the Gold Movie Awards that I was going to Thailand, Bangkok, and then off to the coast. Now, weirdly, I have allergies to things like dust and pollution. I was wearing a surgical mask in Bangkok because it was horrendous. I didn't realize it would be as bad.
Wow.
I've got a photograph on Christmas Day of me walking around with a surgical mask. Who would have known? And that was for pollution levels. Who would have known that
horrendous.
Now? Crazy.
It's horrendous.
Again, places like Thailand and Bangkok, or places, Ho Chi Minh City, where all the little scooters and the pollution is horrible. It's lifting.
I mean, that's
those are positive lights out of this hellish situation, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just telling Ian the other day as well that the Venetian Post put out a report or whatever in their paper. Since all of this has gone away, and obviously everyone's on lockdown, specifically in Italy, they're really strict. If you're on the street, you get arrested. The city of Venice, the water has cleared so much so that dolphins and all these beautiful fish have come along, and the people of Venice are able to see the bottom of the canals, something they haven't been able to do for 40 years. And the thing is, this has been, 5 weeks-ish now, and we have done nothing. Mother Nature's done it. We've done nothing to help. And look how good it is. So any politicians or any leaders or whatever says, oh, no, we can't fix this lake because it costs too much and it'll take 20 years or some shit. No, it won't. No, it won't.
So the thing about it is it's also our personal responsibility
Absolutely.
to look after our surroundings and look after the world and our planet. There's only one. So we can talk about politicians till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, it's our own personal responsibility to look after the planet. And I think people are starting to realise that now.
Absolutely. I think it is. I mean,
nature in a different way, because we're in our gardens. If you're lucky enough to have an outside space, or if you're walking in a park, you suddenly see robins or birds, listen to birds chirping, or see a beautiful sky for the first time, because we're not busy doing something, going off to work on a tube or just.
I know. Oh my God, I know. If I could be, I mean, dare I say that there is. I was just out for a walk yesterday, and there are some things about this whole lockdown process that I will miss. For example, like, it's just the streets are quieter, and it's really lovely. It doesn't take an hour to get up the street, you know, and it's just it seems nicer. There seems to, and it's starting to become a bit. Well, at least for me, and I mean, maybe you're different, but like. I mean, there's not a whole pile of difference in my life, really, because I do a lot of work, you know, from home and producing and writing and so forth. So all that's kind of remains the same. But so the quietness and the you know, the stillness. I mean, just here in East London, a family of buck deer took over a street, just a couple of streets up, and they're sitting out in the street like. You know, just all over the street where the buses and cars would be normally, but they can because they can, which I think is awesome.
It's gorgeous. And speaking of things like, you know, the whole world and the streets are empty, it reminds me of a lot. So I did a little section of a video for a track written by a fantastic Danish singer-songwriter called Stefan Mork. And the first lines are, "This is 2020 and the streets are empty." And it's in response to this pandemic and lockdown for our own safety. But it's an incredibly uplifting song. The lyrics are incredibly uplifting. But what was amazing is people gave clips from all over the globe in lockdown.
That's awesome.
So there are moments where the chorus is, "We will rise," because we will get through this.
Oh, absolutely.
Us as the human species, we will rise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remind me, I'll give you a link so that you can post that at the end, because it's
I will indeed.
But there are people from all over the globe, including Gemma Arterton's in it, the wonderful Sophia from The Killing. I do a little bit. There's people from all over that who just post a little clip on their phone of them doing the action of rising, and it's gorgeous. We gave our clips in, and they made a video about this pandemic and how we will get through it. So Stefan is an amazing artist, and the lyrics are really, really beautiful. But that whole thing about the saying, the world's gotten smaller because of this.
It does feel that way, yeah, which is kind of nice, and I hope that that camaraderie that we seem to be building, at least, I hope that that's not lost when all this is over, for sure. We can't, yeah, I know, right? I don't want to talk about work too much, but I do want to get into some of your work because it's rather awesome. Now, you were saying to me that you okay, so let's start with Shamless to start with, because that was massive. That was huge. And that also was, like, that and Skins. Not only were they both those shows massive shows, but they were, what was it, 2007, 2008? Was it around that time? Yeah, it was 2000.
I think it started in 2000 and something. I joined in 2010 and did the final 4 seasons, which was great.
Yeah, but they were the start of, like, them shows were the start of, like an entire style of show, like that whole teen drama with sex and drugs and partying and all that kind of stuff. Those were the start of them, and now, of course, there's been many reiterations of them since. But they were the start, and they were massive. In fact, Shameless was so big that it spawned a US version with Will H. Macy.
Because do you know what? One of the things about Shameless, which was really good, I mean, you had certain anti-heroes like Alf Garnett in Sickness and in Health, who was kind of racist and all the rest of it, but as a lead character people loved him. Well, Threlly's character of Frank Gallagher was the absolute archetypal anti-hero. And an anti-hero means you've got to have really clever writing. So a guy who, on the outside, potentially is a bit of a loser, where his children are bringing up his other children, he takes drugs, he drinks too much, he looks a state, he's unemployed. But in the same breath, we loved a bit of Frank.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It spawned a whole style of clever writing where you're rooting for a loser.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? As opposed to the matinee idol who could do no wrong, blue eyes and shiny brill-creamed hair. You had a loser character. And that I always find interesting. And it spawned things like, there's a wonderful drama with Michael Chiklis starring in it as a bent cop.
Ooh.
You've got Line of Duty, bent cops.
Ooh.
You know, that whole anti-hero where they're doing bad things.
Yeah, but this is well. I mean, we love them. We absolutely love them. But like, I think this was also, not only was it the start of new storylines where like the teen and late teen and early adult became like the focus of the show, but also it was the first one, at least that I remember, that showed on screen regular folks and even lower middle class and the lower classes of people, where we were used to seeing like all prim and proper and posh and you know, all this kind of stuff, whatever. And then along comes Frank, this, you know, lower runs of society, maybe not as socioeconomically well, you know, stable as most, but yet that is a thing that's real, that is in existence. There's millions of people in this country that live that life or lives, you know, similar to that. And this was the first show that depicted that on screen. And of course, that just opens the door for an abundance of diversity because, like...
Sorry, the thing that was great about Frank is, and I was told this in the street, is he was the intelligent voice of that working class stroke breadline. Because for some reason, society through media have had quite an interesting, dodgy view of people of a particular socioeconomic background, i.e., you're ill-educated, you don't have independent thought, you don't have political views. But Frank encapsulated all of that, and really articulately. Even when he'd go on these monologues, these drunk monologues, what he's saying made a lot of sense. He was extremely articulate, even though he had a slur. So one of the things I remember being told, I remember a homeless guy, I was filming and the first series was on, and I was filming, I was getting back from a Friday night from Manchester and Euston station, and a couple of homeless guys came up to me and wanted to shake my hand, and we were having a chat. And they were absolutely so grateful that Shamless existed. So whatever halfway house or wherever they managed to see it, probably a community centre, they said that that was the programme they would tune in to see because it meant that there was someone like them on screen. And that's why I think it was so popular, that the underrepresented was suddenly represented with a tongue in cheek, because some of it was ridiculous.
Of course.
There was a phase where it did get a bit supernatural and all a bit weird, but it was something where you go, well, actually, I know someone like that. I know guys like that. I know that camaraderie of living on a council estate or a community where we didn't have much money, or, you know, when you can identify with characters on a screen is when you get popularity and it wins hearts. I mean, they did, Paul Abbott wrote, I think, 11, 12 seasons before it ended. And of course, America jumped in on that and changed it around a little bit and made it similar to them. But the absolute fundamental parts of Shameless was still in the American version.
Oh, absolutely. But I think as well, something that show depicted as well, as you very well said, is the underrepresented you know, rungs of society, but also the fact that, and also you mentioned earlier as well, is that yes, Frank might not have been book smart, but that guy was street smart, because there's two types of way to be educated, and not all of them are out of a textbook. So you can be very well versed in societal issues without having an Eton degree or a fancy school or something like that. But you can be every bit as well clued up as the next person. So I want to talk about like for you, how did that happen? And Shameless, I mean, and what was that like to work on that? So as an actress going into that, that must have been one of those kind of before and after jobs.
It was amazing because what was really nuts is not many people know this unless you are a real die-hard, but I actually played another character in season 5.
Oh.
A completely different woman of about 3 or 4 scenes. And it was working with David Threlfall directing me. So when they said they want to bring a new family in and they're looking at you to play the mother of this family, the matriarch of this family, will you look at these sides? Yeah. I was like, okay, they do know that I was in it playing, I don't know, I can't remember the woman's name, another character. Anyway, I went for the first one, which was great fun. And then I'd gone back again and had to work with 2 guys because it was about chemistry at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And what was wonderful is Manny and I, who played Jackson, we were like that. And it wasn't until the first day when I met the daughter. So I'd worked with Manny at one of the auditions doing some quite intimate stuff, comedy, some snogging, you know, it was quite sexual and all the rest of it. And we just got on like I'd known him for years, so I was comfortable. The daunting bit came when I got there on the Saturday and they gave me that cheap weave-in hair because I was playing. I wanted to make her a cheap Naomi Campbell with the extensions, the long extensions. And I had a guy doing my hair in a hotel room, and I hear a knock at the door, and I said, "Who is it?" And it was only Tina Malone, who I'd known from Brookside, and I was like, "Come in."
What you doing here, Tina?
Well,
come in.
She welcomed me before I was going to start on the Monday because I had a lot of my stuff with her on that Monday morning.
Right.
And it was just amazing. I thought, this is real. This is real.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Monday morning, they took me around to things like the pub and all this, that set. I just thought, oh God, Karen, don't keep a lid on the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Because things that you've grown up watching, you're suddenly in it. You A, don't want to let anyone down. B, you want to fit in because you're entering a story and a world. Yeah, it was. So one thing from getting the audition, the next bit of heart palpitations was doing right by these amazing scripts, doing right by a show, a groundbreaking show, making sure that you as a character, you as a family, and we were the first Black family that
was on the show.
Presented.
Wow.
It was important on so many levels. So even things like the sexual stuff. I am not 20. I know I look it. I'm not 20 and I'm not a size 6. So some of the stuff about some of the semi-nudity, I just thought, you know what? A, it's really wonderful to be part of a family where the Black guy is there. A lot of the Black families you see represented on TV, the man's gone. And that's not necessarily indicative of our culture or
of course
our
not.
community.
Of course
Seeing
not.
A man and a woman who were fiercely protective of their daughter in one house, who were together since school days and still shagging. Sorry, I don't care if my ass has got cellulite. You do it, Karen, because you're telling a
awesome,
a wonderful story. But at first I was like, oh, my jelly bum, or all the... No, Karen, just tell the story and be grateful to tell it. And I was pleased to tell it,
man.
even though I'm not a size 6.
It was fantastic. But also, I want to get into something as well. You mentioned is, and that was in, what was that, 2008? So you were on 2008 through 2013, on Shamless. So in that, okay, what was it like? Okay, so being a woman in the entertainment industry, that's one thing. But being a Black woman in the entertainment industry, that's another thing as well. And also now, cut to 2008, very different times to what it is now. So what was that like, being a person who is of a community that is underrepresented, period? In every walk of life, just about, and that was also 2008. So, what was that like being number one, being an actress going into the show. So as the actress going into it, it was a job for you, and it was wonderful, and it must have been it must have been one of those before and after kind of jobs. You know what I mean? It was, oh, I remember what things were like before Shameless and then after Shameless. But then also as a black woman, also playing a part that of a character that's underrepresented, and being a person yourself that's underrepresented. What was that like to do that, and what has changed over the years?
Okay, so there's lots of questions, but one of the things I want to address fully is the before and after that comes to mind immediately is reading a script. I've read loads, and there were scripts I'd read prior to Shameless. I mean, I've done some great stuff. Things like Bodies, again, the edgy
wonderful
stuff.
Piece.
My type of work seems to be quite edgy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
love that.
So even though Shameless was a huge show, I had no idea that it was as huge as it was still groundbreaking, right up my street. Now, reading a character where you go, wow, this woman could have been from anywhere. That's the point. That's the stories I want to tell. I'm playing it, so I'm going to add my experience to do with my culture, my race, I don't want to say race, my culture, my ethnicity. That's a given. But the fact that the character, as you read it, was a woman, full stop, a woman. That is what was so important. Not a woman where you go, she's a black woman, and you add all those stereotypical nuggets to her, but just a woman. Jackson, just a man. The daughter, just a daughter who happened to be really pretty, and the dad was protective. Just stories that meant the world, regardless of where we came from. And that was what was key.
Yeah.
So I was aware of when I was doing it, I did a press conference, and some of the guys were being a bit salacious, and they were saying, oh, we know that Shameless has a lot of sex in it, bada, bada, bada. And I just thought, oh, God, you're boring. And then he said, and then I stopped. There was a moment where I said, I'm not sure that I've seen two black people at it fully. And they all went,
wow.
Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah. So there's a quote somewhere where they managed to brought that, but they were absolutely convinced that they had. And I'm absolutely convinced that there wasn't prior to that. Two people who had been together for 18, 19, 20 years since school days at it. They were on the estate because they were making sex noises, and they had ASBOs for being noisy lovers. Now, little things like, So what happened after it started to air is my community would stop me on the street and say how they made it a thing of word of mouth. Oh my God, there's a black family on Shameless. You want to start watching it? They're funny. That, because suddenly you're seeing something which hasn't got stereotypes whacked all over it.
I know.
But just about.
That's lazy writing, though. That is just that is plain ass lazy ass writing. When you do stereotypes, you know what I mean. You know what? I'm not going to even go into them, but we all know what they are for all the different. Peoples and groups and so forth. It's just such lazy writing. Oh my God. And so uninteresting in every way. Okay, cut to, what is it, 2008? So cut to 13 almost years later. Oh my God. And
I didn't start in 2008. I started in 2010.
Oh, 2010. Okay. So that'd be, cut to 10 years later then. Because I know that we're pressed for time here. We're at about 40 minutes or so. So I do want to get into this because obviously I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. But so cut to 10 years later, as an actress working in the industry right now, or well, before Corona, what's it like? What's changed? I mean, I know things have, but are they moving enough? Has it moved far enough yet?
I'm hoping they will. I could go on about the Me Too movement, how that shifted, wanting to see more female voices. And that's not just from the actor's point of view, i.e. in front of the camera, but right the way through, whether it's behind the camera, whether it's writing, whether it's directing, producing. We are now wanting to hear those stories. And not only that, but also women don't fall off a cliff at the age of 40.
Absolutely.
So a variety of women's voices we're now wanting to hear more of.
Yeah.
I've gone up for a series of certain things where the characters could have been male, and they'll say, okay, Karen, don't be put off by the fact that it keeps saying he, but it needn't be a man.
Okay.
So we're deciding to look at some women as well, and
That's
you're
great.
one of the women we want to look at. So there are a couple of those, and these were like movies.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great to see that shift happening, which started about 4 or 5 years ago, where you kind of go, yeah, well, why did it have to be a he?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it doesn't.
So people are trying to look at things from a different perspective, which of course makes drama, whether it's film, TV, a lot more interesting, actually.
I couldn't agree more.
We're not hidden. We represent 50% of the globe.
Yeah,
Do you see what I mean? And if we're underrepresented, there's something wrong.
Karen, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just, has anyone ever went outside? Have a walk around anywhere. Does everyone look like this guy? No, they don't. Fuck's sakes, like. And also, like, you know, I mean, and also I want to first of all say thank you so very much. You've supported the GMA since basically we started, and since we reached out to you in year 1 or 2, and you've been an absolute sweetheart and you've been to a number of our events. But from running that, and the stuff that we get sent, we have noticed that it is getting a lot more diverse in its stories, and I can't embrace that enough. That's where the future is. It. And also wanted to talk about as well one thing mentioned to you. I'm sure you probably know about this, but for those of you who don't, you mentioned about projects that are primarily female. There is a group. They're called F, as in the letter, F-rated. Among others, Angela Bassett is endorsing it, and we have just become F-rated, which means that, and we're not the only one. I believe Rain Dance as well, and there's a number here in the UK, as well as a bunch all over the world. So what it is to be a contender within an F-rated category, you have to have 70% of your crew and 70% of your troupe, irregardless if they're in front or behind the camera, must be female. Must be, period. So we are having now these categories and these awards within categories that are predominantly female-led. And I think that's amazing because there's so... I mean, you mentioned Sheridan Smith. There's and Lynn Ramsey and, I mean, there's Greta Gerwig. There's so many amazing female directors and artists across the board, not just directors.
Exactly. And what I think this will start to encourage is that we as women step the game up, because what I wouldn't want is there to be a whole thing of you are employed because you're female. I wouldn't want the female to feel they're being employed because they're female, but to make sure that the standard is up because the talent is there.
Absolutely.
And once you start having initiatives like that, you're going to get youngsters going, well, if I see so-and-so being a camera operator, I'll train as a runner, work my way up, focus puller, and that's how it continues. Because I wouldn't want the label planted on and you just get the job because you're female, but the game being stepped up. But the game needs to be stepped up because of opportunity, and that's what I love about things like F-rated, the opportunity in the first place.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have the opportunity, how can you practice your craft and get better and better?
That's the thing.
There. That's the thing.
Yes, I couldn't agree. The mentality has to be changed because, like you just said, and I fully agree with you. 2 things. Number one that I've seen, because I produce as well, as you know, and as do you. 2 things that I don't want to see. I don't want to see a person be hired because they're a woman, because they're black, because they're Asian. And the second one was because a lot of things these in modern times now, you have these, say, a production or whatever it is, and you're hiring people to meet a quota. Okay, no, I have a black person, I have an Asian person, I have a gay person. No, that's not the right way to do it. You hire the person because they are the person for the job, period, irregardless of anything else. Okay, I just want to let people know that we are streaming live, as we all know, to Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all those places. We've got some questions. We've got a bunch of people here on Facebook are loving the Shameless stuff, and there's Sen Monroe. He says to say hello. He's a big fan.
Hello, Sen. Hello, my darling.
Lance Nelson, he's watching. He's got you on right now on his TV, and he's got a question here as well for you. That's not Shameless related, but a good question nonetheless. He's saying, could you ask Karen what was the most challenging experience working on your new TV series Whitehall?
Whitewall. Okay, so it was filmed in Finland, but we're pretending it's Sweden. Now, I did all my city stuff. My character is a ball-breaking, excuse my language, high up in a global nuclear waste company and very articulate. She ends up taking over operations. She's going to the countryside and overlooking this plant. Now, the first time I filmed in the middle of nowhere, this was my commute. My commute was London to Helsinki to Oulu, stay overnight. Someone would pick me up and it would be a 3-hour drive to this village called Piujalvi. I know I've pronounced it wrong. It was freezing. Know what I mean? -30.
People shouldn't live in climates like that. Come on.
Yeah. So the director, Alexei Salma Perez, said, "Oh, for your first scene in this countryside area, we're going to put you on a tower. You may as well jump in and go for it." I went, "Let's do it." There was a wind chill of -30 something. My character is inappropriately dressed.
I'm getting shivers right now.
Character who's from Finland, who's got salopettes, a hat, all the protective gear. I don't know how many feet up, overlooking parts of this, purveying this plant, this mining plant.
And people think it's so glamorous, huh?
I was like that because I was supposed to be inappropriately dressed. I mean, they did try and do the thermal thing, but I haven't got a hat on, the wind, and it would be things like, "Okay, you ready?" And I'd be, and action. And of course, you've got to look like you're not cold.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the Nordic way is really naturalistic. So it's not much singing. There's not much going on in the face. It's all about eye contact and the rest of it. So they go, and action. It was.
You got to try and tame the shivers. And people think it's so glamorous, our job. Oh gosh, no, it's not. But that's amazing because that's the Nordic stuff that's coming out at the moment. I tried to remember this one before we went on. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look it up. But that one I told you about with the levels, with the people living in the tower block. They got some amazing stuff. Like really good. And you said
I'm just hoping this one gets sold somewhere. As I said, it's the makers of The Bridge, which became a firm favourite to the BBC4 type of viewer. Because the thing that's wonderful about all that Nordic stuff, it's the slow burn. People, when you produce something where you don't slap everything in the first episode, people will come back. People are a lot brighter than sometimes a lot of cultures or TV companies or shows give them credit for. Have conversation about certain stuff. Oh no, I think it's that. Oh, I think that's interesting. So it becomes more than just numb watching, but the brain has to, come into play in order to, receive the work.
Absolutely.
So the thing I love about the Nordic is the slow burn, and then things start to come into place. The characters you start to get to know slowly, like you would someone you're interacting with in life. So they become, with The Bridge, Saga Noren.
Okay, we seem to be having...
Quite weird.
Oh, there you are.
Not smiley, but we loved her.
Mm-hmm.
Loved her. We got to know her idiosyncrasies, her foibles throughout the series, where she just look and say, "Oh, now is it now?" Very black and white, not a warm character, but we loved her.
Yeah.
So that slow burn and that slow getting to know a character is the thing I love about a lot of the Nordic stuff.
I agree with you. I personally like that kind of stuff myself, those like slow burning stories. And that nicely brings us on to, because we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon, because I know you've got to get away. So again, thank you so much for your time. But I want to get on to this one, which is one of your newer projects, and it looks absolutely wonderful as well, and of a similar keel or a similar style, I'd say, in that it's probably a slow burner as well. I'm very much looking forward to watching it, and it's called Real. So I'm going to pop the poster up on the screen right now. We have the trailer as well. We'll give that a spin possibly in a second. Should we just do that? We'll give the trailer a spin, and then we can have a chin wag about it when we come back. Sound good? Awesome.
Let me take you out sometime. Maybe we can grab lunch.
Don't really do lunch, sorry.
Okay. What about if you give me your number and we go from there?
2 weeks. That's all I'm giving you.
Thanks, man.
I'm meeting someone. Oh, thanks. He's a solicitor, I think. Oh, Mr. Solicitor.
Single mum kicking arms. I'll get this. Hello.
I'm just doing my job.
Listen, Jimmy doesn't need this. She's not in a good place to be fucked around.
You only think about yourself. Get your things. Let's get out. You have to believe me. You can't take him from me.
If we were just friends, why are you reacting this way?
Because I let you run my fucking son!
Do you want?
How good does that look? That looks amazing.
I know. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. It's directed, written, and starring Aki Omoshebi, the guy in the clip. Amazing young man. And of course, the amazing Pippa Bennett Warner, who played my daughter in Mother, Father, Son for the BBC, the Richard Gere thing. So it's a really wonderful, wonderful set. A really lovely environment to work in. Aki is a bright light. I think we'll be seeing lots more of him. A very simple story told really well, and I'm really into that. Beautifully told, amazing DOP. I love all that.
It looks beautifully shot as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's grim. It's it's ordinary life, which isn't. It's an ordinary life, ordinary stories, and one could see that as being, when I say grim, that sounds terrible, but ordinary. But life is ordinary. People
Absolutely.
are ordinary. People watching that will go, oh, that's, I know people like that. But what was beautiful and made it filmic, because just like dialogue in films, everyone says, I want it to be naturalistic. There's no such thing. Otherwise, we'd be butting over each other all the time. It has to be slightly elevated. Now, what this film has beautifully done is shown the ordinary as such, beautifully shot, all that light behind and the camera flare. Otherwise, we wouldn't watch it. We'd watch a reality show. So that is a perfect example of the way that, independent film can work so beautifully well. A lovely story, very simple story, told beautifully, and that's collectively, the work's brilliant. I only saw it last week. It was supposed to have its premiere. It had its premiere at the London Film Festival to sell out audiences. I was in Nepal, I couldn't go. But to the View in Leicester Square, the View Piccadilly Circus sold out.
Awesome.
I know.
That's
and
awesome.
It's going to have another Q&A at the BFI and then go on release on Friday.
I really love how we over here and just kind of everywhere, but here specifically, we've embraced independent film, independent cinema, and you, darling, are a massive advocate of that, as am myself as well. And I think it's where the future is. I honestly, truly believe the future of good cinema that you would care to watch is in the independent realm. Sure, fine, whatever. We can go and watch Superman swing about or whatever. But if you want good human stories and diverse ones as well, coming from every pocket of society, every angle, every creed, every belief system, it's the independent world where it's at. Period.
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I can't thank you enough for supporting that and supporting ourselves as we try to support that too. Karen, we are at about 55 minutes, so I know you have to get off just after the hour.
So I rabbit on, don't I?
I love it. I could talk, babe. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. So interesting. I love it so much. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's so many more things I could talk to you about. But I know you do have to.
I just want to do a quick little plug.
Absolutely, go for it. Please do.
White Wall should be autumn, which is White Wall autumn. Also, Black Narcissus, which is a remake of the 1948 film, and I'm playing Sister Philippa, who was played by Flora Robson, who was an absolute legend of the silver screen, as it were. It's starring Gemma Arterton and Alessandro Nivola.
Oh yeah, Jim Broadbent as well. I see that.
Disobedience, yeah. And that's all I can say. But that should be coming out at the latter end of this year.
That's amazing.
I
yeah,
don't think I'm
Diana Rigg too.
It's already been, publicised that we were all doing it. But again, another beautiful job.
Yeah, look forward to that one as well. Like, you got the amazing Diana Rigg in there as well, and Jim Broadbent, which is that one's going to be definitely one to look out for. It's just going to be
beautiful director. We were able to go to Nepal. Just beautiful. That's all I'm going to say. And the director's called Charlotte Bruce Christensen, and she's an amazing DOP on movies. She's got a keen eye as well as independent movies. It's beautiful, and I'm fingers crossing that you will watch, but it's BBC and some point later on in the year. I just wanted to give that little plug.
Absolutely, guys, for sure. When that comes out, tune in and keep your eyes peeled for Black Narcissus. That looks absolutely amazing. Karen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really do appreciate it. And to everyone watching as well, because there was a ton today. So yeah, Marty's saying thank you so much, Karen, and Lance and Sen as well. So to everyone out watching, and Karen, of course, to yourself, thank you so very much. And hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you for a coffee or a cheeky vino sooner rather than later. That would be amazing.
Take care, guys. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, darling. Take care. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Hub for the latest episodes. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms and media. The Hub, your weekly fix of all things film and television, and some other stuff. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jason Mathewson.